Welcome to the Cooperative Exchange. I'm Walt Laskos. Just recently, a group of credit union executives from the United States traveled to Cuba with the hope of planting the seeds for the credit union movement in the country. Joining the delegation was Mike Ostrowski, president of ARA Credit Union, Springfield, Massachusetts. Mike joins us today on the Cooperative Exchange to share his experience of the trip, of the people he met, and of the lessons he learned while visiting Cuba. Hey, Michael, thank you for joining us today and for giving me some time to talk to you a little bit about your recent trip. If we could begin, why don't you tell us who was part of the delegation that went down to Cuba with you?
Sure. We were with a great group of individuals, probably a top-notch that I've been in a long time. Brian Branch, the World Council of Credit Unions President and CEO. His Vice President of Member Services, Victor Coro. We also had Jim Nussel and his wife from CUNA, President and CEO of CUNA. Patrick Lapine, who was the President and CEO of the Florida and Alabama leagues. We had John Newsinger, who was Tri-County Orlando Federal Credit Union. Diane Dykstra, she was the President and CEO of California Association. Myself, Tracy Kenyon, she was the President and CEO of Montana Credit Union System. Eddie Black, he was President and CEO of Trico Community Federal Credit Union. Mike Muckian was with the CU Times. He was there to record and write an awful lot about what happened in the trip. And of course, the representatives from the DMA group, Dan Micah and Associates, DMA group, Paul, his son, Paul Micah, and Dan, who was the former president and CEO of CUNA and also former congressman. So it was a great delegation of individuals, very high level people who've had incredible experience in dealing in some of this stuff.
How did you become involved with the delegation and going down to Cuba?
Well, I had expressed some interest in Cuba because, as soon as President Obama signed the documents allowing a little bit more of relations with Cuba, I immediately thought that, boy, being a communist country trying to break into the capitalist world, the model for credit unions would be perfect for them. It really would. And I think their central bank, which, as I'm sure when you ask me questions later will turn out, they're going to have their hands full with bigger issues than to deal with the things that the credit union network could potentially do for the citizens of Cuba.
When you were there, give us a little sense of the agenda of what the delegation did, who you kind of met with during the trip.
Sure. It was a whirlwind thing. I mean, if this wasn't a trip to go sightseeing, I can tell you that. Although we had to go by some of the sites, and it did give us a flavor of what issues and things were up against for both the Cuban government and its people. But we immediately landed, and the very first day we were meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MINREX. We met in subsequent meetings with a second meeting with a higher up deputy of MINREX of Foreign Affairs. We met with the Central Bank of Cuba and high officials in all of these places. We met with the University of Havana economics professors who gave us a great overview of some of the issues that were facing them and breaking into the monetary system and hopefully use of the dollar and all of the things that they're trying to achieve, they want to achieve, and also the hurdles that they would have to go through to get to that point.
It sounds like it was a very fascinating encounter with the different representatives from the government, from the educational system, the whole bit. How did you feel you were received? Was it very warm and friendly?
Yes, they were very attentive. They were very warm and friendly, and they were somewhat open, which was a little bit surprising. But what we were talking about, there really isn't any hidden secrets in what we were talking about. So I felt that they received us well. Let's understand a couple things. Since President Obama signed those documents back in, I believe, in June, they've been hit up with 10 or 15 each week delegations like we had from all different facets to move their country along with people looking for opportunities and this, that, and the other thing. So given that, you can certainly know that their heads are spinning and they're looking to where do we go first.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they're trying
Yeah.
to get their organizational thoughts in a methodical order. One thing I did find out is they want to take themselves through this process slowly and methodically. They don't want to be what happened to Russia, or they don't want to be like China. So I appreciate and respect how they're going about it. They are taking the careful, slow stance and moving forward.
Sounds like they really want to manage the progress going forward.
I think they want to manage it, and they realize how important it is after 50 years of being isolated the way they were. And they realize the huge monumental tasks in front of them to get to that point. So I think they're doing it right. But I think once things start to move, they're going to get overwhelmed even more, and they will need support.
We all have probably images of what Cuban life is like, Cuba, Havana, all that sort of thing. Can you tell us, or from your own personal experience as part of the trip, were there any major surprises that you found yourself going like, whoa?
No, I can't say there are any major surprises. I can tell you this, they're in a country that is dilapidated for lack of money and whatever. Is it beautiful there? Absolutely. I can only imagine what Havana and old Havana and things were like before the revolution. It must have been absolutely incredible. The architecture, everything is nothing short of spectacular. But you shut the faucet off and you stop the clock, and 50 years later you've got dilapidated buildings, infrastructure that's poor, and that's all because of the money flow that isn't there. I will give them huge credit. Their educational, their health are all very good for their people.
Interesting. Yeah, because I guess you would imagine that after 50 years in that isolation, it is going to wear and tear down on the infrastructure, and all that needs attention now.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The Pope had just visited Cuba, I think the month before, or a few weeks before, and we were told the main boulevard from the airport to downtown Havana, where we were, a lot of the buildings were painted, just for his visit, and it was beautiful to see the flag of the Vatican with the flag of the country of Cuba lining the center flagpoles all the way down the boulevard.
Interesting. Tell us, Mike, the conclusions that you and the delegation have come to after this visit.
Well, I'm not a politician, nor do I work with the World Council of Credit Unions. That's their expertise. I was so impressed with Brian Branch, the CEO and president of the World Council of Credit Unions, and not only just about how he goes about putting something like this together, how he finds the right people to talk to, and how he presents himself, and how the credit union concept would benefit them. He was nothing short of terrific. But I guess going back to your question, I think just planting the seed, the model fits perfectly with what they want to do. They already have financial cooperatives in their agricultural sector. And so it's not anything they're unfamiliar with, but I do believe they're afraid to put that kind of power, if you will, or control of money into a group of individuals' hands. And I say that because I believe that, they've got this great opportunity now in the world, and they don't want to have any problems, like I said, in the international money markets, with the sanctions and the penalties that could be there for supporting terrorism or what have you. And one blip from a small credit union that's there to help people helping people, could really hurt them. So they're very cautious with that. I think the central bank is going to have so many things on their plate at the higher level that they're almost going to have something like a financial cooperative at the lower level. So eventually it's going to come together, I think, but it's going to take some time with everything. And knowing what we've heard about how they put together things in a very slow, methodical, thought-out fashion makes sense. It'll happen, I think, but it'll take some time.
So would that be, if we were to say what kind of conclusions, or I should say next steps that could be drawn from the visit, would it be that suffice it to say that, well, the seed has been planted?
I think the seed has definitely been planted, and I believe that the World Council of Credit Unions will continue to plant the seed and do the efforts that they do. I think what my thought coming away from all of this was that the World Council does a great job. And, you know, I love our industry. They promote our industry all around the world. They've done incredible things in Poland, for example. And I think my takeaway was, you know, Mike Ostrowski's not going to go start a credit union in Cuba. That wasn't the deal, or anyone else there. But we're there to lend assistance and let the Cuban people and the government know that we'll help them. We're not looking for their money, you know, is one thing. But I think the most important thing is the support of the World Council. And I got, like I said, a great appreciation for Brian and his group of people there and what they do and how they do it. So my takeaway, quite honestly, is how can I support the World Council? They already know how to go in and set up the credit unions and do the contacts. So whether it be monetarily, which I will probably talk to my board and say, hey, look, you know, these are the types of things they do, and it is our industry, and we should be, you know, promoting them in any way we can. Or with human resources. Let some of their individuals come up here and learn from how we do things, whether they're at the teller line looking at our management, how our board's set up, whatever, how we deal with the regulations that we have. That also is, you know, like an in-kind trade that I think would be invaluable, you know. And I think, like I said, my takeaway of this is that's what we should be supporting the World Council and CUNA on.
Yeah. Before we let you go, well, you know, when you look at it all, was the trip worth it?
Absolutely. From a personal side, I got to see what the World Council does. I had the pleasure of being with Dan Mica, the former CUNA president and CEO and congressman, Jim Nussel, former senator and current president and CEO of CUNA. Just being around those individuals and discussing so many different things and how they apply, it gives me a greater understanding of, you know, my industry, the people that I work with, the people I rely on, and also, you know, the trip to Cuba was part of that too, don't get me wrong, and it was an integral part. That's what brought us all together. But I think the whole thing was just fascinating and well worth. There's no price that you can put on that for the experience garnered from that exchange.
Well, you know, I cheated. One last question.
Sure.
Did you get a chance to have some, taste some natural, fresh Cuban cuisine while you were there?
We did. I go to Miami every now and then, and I love Cuban food. So there are plenty of beans and rice and chicken and goat. The goat was awesome, quite honestly. And I won't deny that I had some rum and I had a cigar.
There you go. Michael, thank you so much.
Walter, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Sir.